We walked to this sidewalk in this really dirty, filthy area where there was this hand pump. And he said, "This is your home." And I was like surprised. And he said, I never want you to forget that when we came from India and partition, myself and my father and my sisters, we spent some nights here on this footpath. Came here with nothing. You see this pump? This is where I would run to take my shower in the morning. This is where we started. I never want you to forget this. So you're going to go to a place that's really comfortable and very luxurious. But don't forget where we've come from. You know, I have no assets. I have nothing to my name now. I ditched everything 3 years ago. I just have books, 4 pairs of good quality shoes, 3 good suits, 7 good shirts, 3 good pants, 1 pair of really good jeans. All high quality, but it all fits into one suitcase. That's all I have. And I remember I was only 7 years old, and I opened the newspaper and there was a picture of Lal Bahadur Shastri and Ayub Khan, and there was some headlines, big headline about war. And the first thought that came to my mind, and I remember that vividly, and I don't know why I still remember it, but it said, the thought was, but these are grown-ups. That was my first thought. I said, but these are grown-ups. I thought kids fight. The youth, the elders, went through this extensive civil warden training. And I was 13 and I was too young, but I pitched a fit and I said, no, all these other kids in the neighborhood are going to go through this training, so will I. And finally, one of the naval officers, he relented. So he said, all right, let him sit. And I went through the program. I came out of it with flying colors. So I became probably one of the youngest civil defense wardens in the country. The height of the war, I think it was around 16th or 15th December 1971. I was picked up by Hashim Raza, one of the leading intellectuals of this country, and he interviewed me. And he asked me, what do I do during the air raid, and so on and so forth. And his last question was, what does your mother say? Doesn't she get scared when you go out when there's an air raid? And I said, to the contrary, when I'm sleeping and the sirens go off, my mother wakes me and she says, son, wake up and go do your duty. And the interview finished on that line. The next day, a lot of people called the station and called my dad and said, we were contemplating leaving this town and we heard this kid and we decided to stay put.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing? We have the honor today to be with Ramiz Allawala. Ramiz is doing a training, so we took an hour away from the training for him, and we are going to find out who is Ramiz Allawala. So Ramiz, how are you doing today?
If I was doing any better, you'd need 2 of me.
Okay, excellent. So Ramiz, tell us about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in a small suburb of Rawalpindi, which in those days was a very small town. And outside, 5 miles out of Rawalpindi is a refinery town called Morga. Attak Oil Company was a company run by the British, and the British Steel Company owned it. And it was a lovely colony with wonderful houses and plenty of lawns and a swimming pool right next to our house, which started my passion for swimming. And there were these big fields right about 100 meters away from our house, and we could see all the storms rolling in and all the 4 seasons. And Attak Oil hired the best of the best in all fields, management, engineering. So any talent that was in Pakistan was first hired by Attak before it went anywhere else.
So you were hired when you were born?
I wasn't hired. My father was. So all his contemporaries and colleagues were highly talented individuals. So all their kids and the family structure, the life in that community was ideal. We had sports facilities. We had these parents who were all achievers, highly educated. And it was just an amazing atmosphere. I mean, I will lose count of my contemporaries who become successful. Dr. Mali Lodi, Azmat Saeed, who's now going to be Chief Justice in Pakistan. Azam Jamil, who's the director of Serena. The list just goes on and on. These are just, it all came out of that community. Nayyar Hussain, who's the CEO of a bank right now, she's one of the top female bankers in the country.
So we need to create another Mora for the next 60 years.
Morga.
Morga for another 60 years.
Yeah. We need to create more and more of them.
And what was your father hired as?
He he had 2 degrees. One was a master's in chemistry from Aligarh University, and one was a master's in chemical engineering from Illinois Institute of Technology. And he came back and joined. He walked away from the family business, and he was one of the very first professionals in our business community. And when he joined Atak, he was promoted rapidly. He rose, and he became the first chief chemist. Now, in a refinery, a chief chemist is a critical position. It's a very central position to the entire refinery operation. So he was the first Pakistani chief chemist. So we had this wonderful life in Morga, and I went to a school run by missionaries. It was called St. Mary's Chaklala. This is where the Chaklala Air Force Base was. And the admission process was really unique. I remember I was 5 years old, and my mother one day asks my brother, take him to school today. So he took me to school and took me to the class 1 teacher and said, my mother sent him and said, I must bring him to you. And she said, okay, set him down right there. And that was my admission. And I started going to school.
How old were you then?
5 years old. No nursery, no prep, no this, no. Unlike my kids who started school when they were 2.5 years old.
So were your parents very social?
My parents, I'd say were extremely social. My father was a man of the world who has been traveling internationally since a young man. He had the bug in him, which all 3 brothers inherited. We love to travel, and we can't stay in one place for more than a few weeks. And that duration is getting shorter and shorter. First it was a few months, then it became a few. Now for me, it's a few days. I can't stay in one place for more than a few days. I have to hop on the plane and move again.
And I heard your mother was also very extremely social.
Yes, my mother was a highly educated woman. She came from a family of 6 sisters, 3 brothers. Father was a self-made millionaire. He did very, very well. And he, in turn, was an orphan whose parents had died in the Great Plague in Kashmir at the turn of the century. So the people who adopted him, his relatives, they married him off to their daughter. And then he went and he got into the BD business, which are those rolled cigarettes. And it started with a push cart, and the business grew and grew. And then he became the sole distributor for the largest tobacco company in the world, which later on went on to be Pakistan Tobacco Company.
What was this company?
That's a good question. They were headquartered out of Rawalpindi, and it was a cigarette distribution. So these 6 sisters were very independent. The father really doted on them, and they all got educated. One of my mother's sisters, my khala, she was the first female FRCS in Pakistan. Went to Glasgow and got her fellow the Royal College of Surgeons. My mother had 2 master's degrees, one in Persian, one in Urdu. She stood 4th in Punjab University. One of my other khalas is a master's in biology. One of my khalas had the dubious distinction of being an actress. She married to Kamal Ahmed Rizvi, Allan from Alif Noon fame.
He's a khalu.
He's my khalu, yeah. My khalas would want me to say he's my ex-khalu. But for me, the relationship is still as a khalu. So my mother was then involved in a lot of the women's movements. She's quite an unsung hero. She devoted 2 years of her life to rehabilitating all the Biharis who came in 1971 as refugees. So this Orangi township, a lot of the original houses that were built, she stood there in the sun and got them built because she didn't trust anyone. And I remember one day, I complained about the food in the house. I said I wasn't going to eat it because I didn't like it. And she bundled me in the car. She took me out to Orangi and she said, this is a bad life. You have a good life. You complain some more, you'll end up here. And after that, I didn't complain about food or anything else. Yeah, there's another sort of a defining moment in my life. I've had a few really good defining moments. One was when we were in Atak refinery, and Dad was hired to start national refinery in Pakistan, and the new owners had, in order to entice him, gave him a lavish house and beautiful car, chauffeur driven and air conditioned home. We're talking 1965, Toyota Crown Deluxe with 4 air conditioners in it was unheard of, and all these luxuries. We didn't know about any of this. So we took this train ride from Rawalpindi, and it was a very traumatic ride for me because I was leaving my home and this one community and safety and going into this new place that I didn't know much about. And when we landed in Karachi, so we got in this car and he said, "I'm taking you home. We're going home." And we went into this really dirty part of the city, a lot of traffic, and he opened the door. He told the driver to stop, and we stepped out and we walked to this sidewalk in this really dirty, filthy area where there was this hand pump. And he said, "This is your home." And I was like surprised. And he said, I never want you to forget that when we came from India and partition, myself and my father and my sisters, we spent some nights here on this footpath. Came here with nothing. And you see this pump? This is where I would run to take my shower in the morning. This is where we started. I never want you to forget this. So you're going to go to a place that's really comfortable and very luxurious. But don't forget where we've come from. That was one of the biggest lessons you could give a 7-year-old kid who pretty much up to that point had everything any 7-year-old kid could have wanted.
So all your brothers were there with you?
Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah, the whole family was there.
So how was Karachi going?
Karachi was chaotic. I was the only one who got into grammar school. And that was a totally different culture. It was dog eat dog, and the teachers were, I thought I landed up in a zoo. My grammar school had the sections A, B, and C. And there I was, this, kid out of almost near rural areas. And here were all these kids who spoke English and came from rich families and privileged backgrounds. And they were just a riot. And the teachers were, I couldn't adjust. I just didn't belong. I think I spent 10 years there. And to this day, I feel like an outsider. House captain, I was almost head boy, captain of the swimming team, rugby team. Anybody who look at me would say, this guy is a grammarian. I tell you, to this day, I still feel I'm an outsider. I never adapted to that culture.
What's the difference? People who have never been to grammar school, how is it?
Well, I don't know. I could never adapt. I could never adapt to the priorities. I have some wonderful friends who are grammarians. I think they're wonderful human beings. They're global citizens. Almost all my friends from grammar school, especially from my class, I hold them in this esteem. They've all achieved great things. They've got great hearts, wonderful people. But if you say, am I one of them? I'd say no. And if you ask them, is Rameez one of you? They'd say the same thing. I was always on the periphery. Even when I was leading them, I was on the periphery. And what was that? Can I define it? No. It was just a sense. There was a barrier, some kind of an invisible difference that was never bridged.
Did you thought that you came from a not so well off family?
No, there were kids in my class who came off from even poorer families. And I wasn't not so well off. Maybe we were never cash rich. But we had all the trappings of a very comfortable life.
I think that's something which you pinpointed. Most people, the business community is normally cash rich, whereas professional community is almost never cash rich. How do you differentiate that?
Well,
which one is better? mean, I asked
Oh,
you guys the same thing.
cash is king. Cash is king. Now my life is so simplified. I have no trappings at all in my life. None. To me, it's just, everything is just cash. You know, I have no assets. I have nothing to my name now. I ditched everything 3 years ago. I just have books, 4 pairs of good quality shoes, 3 good suits, 7 good shirts, 3 good pants, 1 pair of really good jeans. All high quality, but it all fits into one suitcase. That's all I have. Even the furniture in my house is not mine. I told my wife when we moved to Houston, I said, why would we want to spend money on something that's going to depreciate in value and something that's going to take so much of our time and energy maintaining and preserving it? Why do we want knickknacks that hold us down when we want to move? I said, you have memories, take pictures of them and keep pictures. So, so I've got this wall, this 2 rooms filled with plaques and certificates and stuff that people have honored me by giving me plaques and cards and mementos. And I said, take pictures of them. Get rid of them. You have some nice little knick-knack you picked up from somewhere that brings back great memories. Take a picture of it and keep it. If you ever want to reminisce, you can see the picture. Why do you need this hard thing you want to lug around all over the world with you?
What happened to all the plaques then?
Just put them in a box and probably at the bottom of some ocean right now or sitting in some kabaddia's shop. And they're probably figuring out how can they erase my name and reuse it. Or how do we dismantle and use the wood and the glass and separate it? I don't know what they're doing with it. If I give it, I put it on a cart and I asked my chowkidar, I said, sell it and keep the money. I never asked him how much he got for all that junk.
So what happened after
So this is a message for those who could think about giving me plaques.
Send a photo.
Yeah, just take a photo. Give me the photo.
And what about those people who are actually wanting those plaques? Who desire, who envy those plaques?
What about them? I say...
Is it worth getting the plaque?
Maybe at their stage, wherever they are in their development or evolution, maybe it is important to them. It's not important to me.
Anymore.
I don't even think it was important then. In other words, would I have done it more? Would I have exerted myself more? Would I have exerted myself less if I'd known there wasn't? In fact, a lot of these times I didn't even know I was going to receive a plaque. I just delivered something 2 days ago and they gave me a bouquet and a Parker pen and I didn't know I was going to get a Parker pen. And my God, if they knew how bad I am in keeping pens, they would never give me a Parker pen. I lose a pen a day, So
give you a box of pen next time with
give me, 10-cent pens, give me a whole bunch of them. And I wouldn't take those because then I'll have to lug them around. So what do you give someone like me? Give me your love. Give me your prayers.
Give you a big hug.
Give me a big hug.
Yeah. So what happens after grammar school?
I was really lucky. I got to tell you, man. One of the things was that I had this passion for swimming ever since I was a kid. And I had an opportunity. We were members of a club, so I would swim. But I never had the talent. But through sheer dint of hard work, I guess, I became a national champion. And it was because of my swimming, not because of my grades. I got accepted into one of the best business schools in the US, which was Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And that was life-altering for me because I suddenly realized that teaching and learning is a very different experience than what I had seen at grammar school. And I got hooked. And I got hooked onto subjects that nobody in their wildest imagination could believe I would do well in, like taxes or estate planning or leadership or entrepreneurship or European history. So my major was general management, but my minor was fascinating for me. It was society and technology. So we looked at technology and human values. We looked at the future, and most of my work was all about the future. And that hooked me to where I am today. It's all about planning and preparing and adjusting and adapting to the future. And thank you. You could sense I'm getting cotton mouth. So swimming has played a huge role in my life. And social service.
And still swimming?
Yeah.
So are you going to put up some swimming pools in Karachi?
I don't think we need swimming pools. We got 500 miles of coastline. What do we need a pool for?
It's filthy dirty.
No, the coastline turns into there's a difference between filthy, dirty and salty. The filthy, dirty is just the harbor. You go outside another 7 miles and it's pristine. It's like a swimming pool. And for 6 months out of the year, the water is the safest in the world. It's like a lake. And you've got clarity up to 40 feet in some areas. That's better than any swimming pool.
We have a city off South Australia. So, it wouldn't harm to have some swimming pools around, especially in Orangi. And
not at all. And I think there should be saltwater pools.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Why do you need freshwater pools? You got so much seawater. Just run it through a basic filtration, gravity-based filtration system. And run it, and then at the end of the day, run it out back to the sea again. And have tons of these pools.
That's a good idea. What about laying down new water lines, which actually serves you with seawater?
Yeah, for sewerage, and then you can run this all through sewerage and everything else and flush everything out back by using seawater rather than...
Just use it for cleaning and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Idea. It's already got the scouring in it. It has a lot of natural minerals and a lot of stuff that's very good for cleansing and it's good for the body. When you swim in the ocean, anytime I have any sort of a breakout of, a rash or something, I hit the beach. At the end of the day, it's gone. If I cut myself, I go into the sea. By next day, it's all healed.
Wow.
Oh, sea's got amazing properties. Anyway, that's something else.
Waterman.
Aquaman. A lot of my friends call me Aquaman. The other defining, the two wars that I went through defined me a lot. My first experience was in Morga, where Attock Oil was one of the targets of the Indian Air Force. So we saw a lot of action, a lot of air raids, and we had to go through a lot of drills. And I remember there was a panic that used to run through all the mothers in that very idyllic, peaceful community. When the air raid sirens would go and you could see the action in the air. And I remember I was only 7 years old and I opened the newspaper and there was a picture of Lal Bahadur Shastri and Ayub Khan. And there was some big headline about war. And the first thought that came to my mind and I remember that vividly and I don't know why I still remember it, but the thought was, but these are grown-ups. That was my first thought. I said, but these are grown-ups. I thought kids fight. These are grown-ups fighting. I said, how stupid. And I think since that day, my drive as a mediator and somebody who resolves conflicts in myself and with others and between others, I think has something to do with that alarm, that disappointment, that shock that grown-ups can't work through their problems and they must fight and kill each other and take lives. I haven't reconciled to that to this day. If my son fights with, his 10-year-old friend, I can accept that. But if my father fights with his brother at the ripe old age of 70, I can't accept that. And something's gone wrong. I'm not saying that's happened, but God forbid if it was to happen, I'd be deeply disappointed and hurt because that means that somewhere on the immaturity to maturity continuum, there have been some big gaps that have been left behind.
Did you find an answer for why do the people fight?
Yes, of course.
What's that?
Well, for a couple of reasons. Because we're not mature enough to help everybody identify their needs and then help them get those needs met. Lack of clarity.
Any solution?
Sure. Dialogue, engagement, compassion. We first have to learn to break out of the system that we've been conditioned in, which is obedience to authority, leading to labeling people who disobey, leading to creating invisible caste systems, leading to getting people to rely on external rewards and punishment to get them to move, to get them to motivate. I think what we've done is we've moved away from our natural purpose in life which is to enrich the lives of others and through that process enrich ourselves. And if we to do that, that means we would then create abundance. And if we do that, then we would generate a lot of gratitude. And if we do that, there'd be no wars.
Okay, I'll take you up on that.
Anytime.
So what happened?
So that was the first war. The second war was really interesting because I was 13 and again, we were the target because we were living in a neighborhood where there was a naval base right next to us, the Lower. Then there was this bridge that connected the harbor with the city, the native jetty bridge. Then we had on the front side, then we had the oil terminals which supplied the energy lifeline to the country, to the south of us, half a mile as a crow flies. Then we had the cotton exchange, entire storage of the entire cotton of this country to the north of us. And all within, so these were 5 primary targets within 500 yards of my house. So the youth, the elders went through this extensive, civil warden training. And I was 13 and I was too young, but I pitched a fit and I said, no, all these other kids in the neighborhood are going to go through this training. So will I. And finally, one of the naval officers, he relented. So he said, all right, let him sit. And I went through the program. I came out of it with flying colors. So I became probably one of the youngest civil defense wardens in the country. So when we were doing all of this, at the height of the war, I think it was around 16th or 15th December, 1971, I was picked up by, what is his name? Hashim Raza, one of the leading intellectuals of this country. And he interviewed me. And he asked me, what do I do during the air raid and, so on and so forth. And his last question was, what does your mother say? Doesn't she get scared when you go out when there's an air raid? And I said, to the contrary, when I'm sleeping and the sirens go off, my mother wakes me and she says, son, wake up and go do your duty. And the interview finished on that line. The next day, a lot of people called the station and called my dad and said, we were contemplating leaving this town and we heard this kid and we decided to stay put. So I think my mother has a lot to do with keeping people in Karachi at the height of the war. Thank God everything turned out okay. Otherwise, she'd have a lot of explaining to do.
And how old were you in the first war?
7 and 13 in the second. Haven't seen a third, thank God, and I don't think I'm quite ready to see the third.
So what happens after you graduate?
I moved down to Houston, Texas. I went to a small business school. It was the only Republican Party stronghold in all of Massachusetts. And I moved down to Houston, Texas, fired with all this entrepreneurial conviction, learned all these lessons, which later turns out they were all the wrong lessons to teach a young idealist. And started this one company in trading in oil and petroleum products, and it promptly folded in about a year. But the lessons I learned from that experience have stuck to me today. So my second company, that was 1980 to 1981. So 1982, I started another company, and that company did really well. And then we pulled off some big deals down in Puerto Rico. We bought some huge plants. And then we leased out those plants to some huge multinational companies, and those companies did very well. And petrochemical, ethylene, polyethylene, butadiene, polyolefins. It was basically a polyolefins plant. We brought the whole. Yeah, we were working together. He was in Pakistan getting his other businesses off the ground. And so we did that for about almost 7 years in Houston. And then I met Karen, my wife, and in Houston. And she was a very unique entrepreneur. She was a public speaker. She was a trainer. And she ran her own direct mail advertising company. So what was big now, the social media, that was big then. It was just direct mail, getting your message across through mail was very big. And she was very creative. She was on a number of radio talk shows, and then the University of Houston picked her up to teach that course. It was called Industrial Direct Response to engineering students and other students in the technology department. And that's when I first got exposed to something known as adult learning. People actually growing up and going back and learning something. So when we moved to Pakistan, which was another story why we moved. When we moved here, my dad had a management consulting company. So he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to start a training division in this management consulting company. And he said, yeah, that's a great idea. So we ran other companies, but I ran this part as a baby.
That was
1987 to 1997. Yeah.
That
And
was
then,
the Gulf Storm or
no, that was called MA Associates.
Muhammad Allawala?
Muhammad Ahmed, yeah. And they had these partners who were all highly enlightened. There were 4 partners. One of them was Mr. Abul Kalam, who was secretary railways, and now he's chancellor NED University. One of the partners was Mr. Masood Hassan, who was secretary production. He was the one who started Treat factory. Then he was the one who brought in Tetra Pak in Pakistan. He retired as Secretary of Defense Production. He put up the camera rebuild factory. He was responsible for the whole camera rebuild factory where all our Air Force engines and planes are rebuilt. So then there was my dad who started National Refinery, started Parco, Petroman, Pak High Oils, NR Petrotech Services. So all these people were real pioneers and leaders. And there was this one little punk kid, who sort of soaked it up. And I was part of them. They accepted me. They loved, the energy I was bringing in, the ideas, the optimism, the hope. And so there we were in this one team. And thankfully, every time I did interfere with what they were doing, they were very patient and gave me room to make mistakes. And I learned a lot about consulting and process consulting and solution finding, problem solving, understanding, dialoguing, communicating. So it was all good. It's all been really good.
So why did you move to Pakistan, since it's an interesting story? Most people don't want to come back.
I wanted to marry Karen, and I wanted my father and my family to bless it. And my father put this one condition to Karen. He said, if you want me to bless this union, bring my son back. So the minute she heard it, she started packing. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm taking you home. So why are you doing that? She said, because that's the only way your dad will bless this marriage.
But you got married earlier?
No, we came here and got married.
So you ended up staying 10 years?
We ended up staying 22 years.
22 years.
Pakistan, yeah. Now we moved back. And in those 22 years, we had wonderful children. Had Elisa. We adopted her the day she was born in Lahore. Then 13 months later, we had our own biological daughter. And then 10 years later, we adopted my son, Zach, the same day he was born. And that's it.
Today, why should somebody hire Rameez Allawala?
For 3 reasons. Only those people who are really committed and driven to improving productivity in their organizations should hire me. If you are committed to just running trainings or doing some learning in your organization or bringing some change in people, don't hire me. Because yes, we do learnings. Yes, we do bring change. Yes, we do trainings. But ultimately, it all has to be linked to productivity. And I'm there to bring more productivity in your organizations. That's why they should hire me.
And the people who have already enjoyed your blessings who already have hired you for
my clients?
Yes.
Oh, man, actually, they haven't enjoyed my blessings. I've enjoyed theirs because it's just been such a wonderful journey working with Mobilink, working with Engro Polymer, working with Habib Bank, working with Tapal Tea, a lot of the local brands, working with my own family brands, Atco Laboratories, for example. I work a lot with Said Allawala. Working with some of the government organizations like NCHD, National Commission for Human Development. Working for customs, working for income tax, working for police. Pakistan Army, we've done some trainings. For some large NGOs, Plan International. Some of my favorite organizations right now that I'm working with is, Capco, very nice, solid organization. Parco, something that I'm connected to emotionally because my father started that. He was a founding managing director. So it's all been good. It's all been very good.
So are your children going to become trainers also? Or?
They're showing that desire. I see how they lead conversations. I see how they engage people. I see how they ask questions. I see how they facilitate dialogue going forward. I see how they can close a discussion and bring it to some point. Yeah, I think, I don't know about if they'll model that, but all three of them certainly have said that they will adopt children. All three of them have said that. They said it's been such a wonderful experience for them that said, we're going to do it too.
What do you want to tell the people who are wanting to be trainers? Why should they become trainers?
It's not about you. It's not about you at all. If you really want to be a trainer, then you need to believe that you'll find enrichment for yourself once you start enriching others. And it's not about, and do it for free. Do it for no money. Just go out there and start doing it. If you want to be a trainer, just start doing it. In any opportunity. Sitting in a cab, sitting anywhere, start talking to people, start understanding, start helping, facilitating, help them move their mindset, shift their mindset, help them create a willingness to learn new skills, help them to find solutions to their problems, help them to change their habits and to develop new habits and to develop, strong follow-through mechanisms and to stay with it. And just keep putting yourself out there all the time. I'm always looking for opportunities to work with people. And I think 90% of the time I'm not getting paid because I'm doing it around the clock without even thinking about it. It's just reflex. And formal sessions such as this one, bring all the bread and butter for me and enough money for me to be happy. It's not going to make you rich.
You said a very interesting thing. That do it for free. In a society which is generally not, we in Pakistan, for example, we call ourselves a very cultured society. However, unfortunately, I find that we are not, most of the country is not very cultured because we are cultured in culture, but what is our culture? That's something which we need to look at. However,
I disagree.
Totally understandable. The thing which I find is that most people are very money oriented, money centric.
Maybe who you're running with, who's your circle. Most of the people I hang out with, man, they put a lot of effort in trying to earn money, but they also spend a lot of effort in helping people. And when they don't have the time to do that, then they share their money.
So I'm talking about the lower middle class and the lower class.
Yeah, I think they're struggling so much with just survival. But even there, if you look at their hospitality, you look at how they extend help to each other in times of trouble and how they share their money and the little bit that they have. I think we're one of the most generous and the most giving people on this planet. I think there are only two nations that really give from the heart that I've seen, and I've traveled a lot and I've seen a lot. The Americans and the Pakistanis. These are the two most generous people in the world.
So now, if they end up training for free, how do they make money? How do they make their own ends meet?
Because they become good at it, and once you become good at anything, money flows.
Money comes after you.
Money comes. It's, the 10,000 hour rule. Get the practice. Then you become world class at anything and the money comes.
And what about the people who are already out there calling themselves trainers and doing it? The goal is basically money.
I think they'll have a tough time. I think it's going to be difficult for them because you need to be more than just 3 questions deep. You can run a program and a PowerPoint slide, and you can buy a franchise, or you can buy a courseware from somewhere and they'll show you what to do what after 15 minutes. But if you're really not engaging from the heart, and and you can't answering people's questions, and you're just sticking just directly to the content, you might be able to assist people in some skill building. But I think the mind shift won't happen, and I think the habits won't change. And you need all 3. You need the mindset, change of habits, and building new skills for huge increases in productivity. Otherwise, it's an intellectual exercise. You can ask a dictator, tell me about democracy, and he'll be very happy, and he'll give you the Cambridge University's definition of democracy, and he can probably present a very good paper. But is he really a Democrat? Can he really operate like a Democrat? Can he give an account of his actions? No.
So what message do you want to give to this country? Where do you see them at this point?
I think this country has, and we were discussing it this morning, some of the most talented people in this world are right here. Manage that talent well. Don't kill your children. Don't put all that money in population control and birth control. Have your children and give them opportunities to learn, to develop, to be groomed, and manage it well. Raise them well, because even if we had no natural resources, this would be our biggest resource. Our trouble is we have so many natural resources, we just got lazy with this resource. So we landed up mismanaging our natural resources, and then we landed up mismanaging our human resources. I would have been far more grateful if we just had the human resources and no the natural resources. We probably would have come out like Japan.
Anything else you want to add?
I really
I'm speechless.
Well, I'm still full of speech, so we can keep it going, but we're seeing all these participants are coming back. So we need to start the program.
It was an honor to be able to talk to you like this, and I hope a lot of people who are listening to this will also enjoy this like I did. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, because I admire what you're doing, and in the last couple of years, what you've achieved. We share the same last name, we are relations, so I just want to clarify to everybody that you might think, this is, brother supporting brother, nepotism. And there's nothing wrong with it. But Rehan and I have recently reestablished our connections, and I think he's an amazing man. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Good.